The plate shattered against the tile floor, soup splattering across Pa Gabriel's worn trousers.
Useless old man. You think my restaurant is a charity house for beggars like you?
By the collar of his
Your son, show me this son now or wash my pot till you finish paying.
You think my restaurant is a charity house for beggars like you? Please, Pa Gabriel whispered, his voice shaking. I have the money. My son will send it. Just 1 hour, I beg you. Your son. The owner laughed cruelly, shoving him back into the chair so hard it scraped against the floor. Every madman on this street has a rich son somewhere. Show me this son now or wash my plates until you finish paying. The whole Bukka erupted in
old
laughter.
People and their lies.
This
one is even better than Nollywood. Say your line again, old man.
Old people and their lies, he mocked, panning the camera closer to Pa Gabriel's face. This one is even better than Nollywood. Say your line again, old man. Wash the plates. Wash the plates, a woman chanted,
Look at
banging
him.
her
Too
spoon
proud
on
to
the
even
table,
beg properly.
and others joined
Useless.
in, clapping and jeering like it was entertainment. Pa Gabriel's eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. He lowered his head, his hands folded in his lap, absorbing every insult in silence because he had nowhere else to hide. Look at him, someone sneered. Too proud to even beg properly. Useless.
Mama is lying on a
From the
thin
corner
mattress at
table,
home,
Aduk
waiting
had
for
stopped
medicine I
eating.
saved 3 weeks for.
Her spoon hung
How
frozen
little
in
this
the
money
air as
matters
she
to
watched the
anyone
old
but
man
me.
being torn apart, watched him shrink smaller and smaller with every laugh that hit him. She thought about her mother lying on a thin mattress at home, waiting for medicine Aduk had spent 3 weeks saving for. She thought about her 2 younger siblings who hadn't eaten meat in a month. She thought about how little that folded money in her bag would matter to anyone but her. Then she thought about the shame on the old man's face, and something inside her chest tightened until she couldn't sit still any longer. How much does he owe?
You?
The chanting stopped.
You can't finish your plate and you want to
Every
be a
eye
hero.
in the Bukka
I
turned
asked
to
you a
her.
question.
The restaurant owner squinted, unimpressed. You can't even finish your own plate and you want to be a hero. I asked you a question, Aduk said, standing up slowly, her voice steadier than she felt. How much? 2,500 naira, the owner snapped, folding his arms like he expected her to sit back down in defeat. Aduk reached into her worn handbag with trembling fingers.
Leave him alone.
She pulled out the crumpled notes she had folded so carefully that morning, money meant for her mother's blood pressure medication, money she had gone without lunch for 2 days to complete. She counted it slowly in her palm, her heart pounding, knowing exactly what she was about to give away. Then she walked over and placed every single naira on the table in front of the stunned restaurant owner. There. It's paid. Leave him alone. Gasps rippled through the Bukka. The young man with the phone lowered his camera, confused. Pa Gabriel lifted his head for the first time, staring at Aduk like he couldn't understand what had just happened.
Why?
The restaurant
You don't
owner
even know
asked,
this man.
genuinely
Does that matter?
baffled.
Nobody
You
deserves to
don't
be
even
treated
know
like
this man.
Not for a plate
Does
of food.
that matter? Aduk's eyes were wet now, but her voice didn't waver. Nobody deserves to be treated like this. Not for a plate of food. She turned to leave, but Pa Gabriel caught her wrist gently. Wait, he said, his
What
voice
is your name?
hoarse.
Aduke.
What is your name?
Aduke. I
Aduk,
will remember that
she
name.
answered softly. The old man's eyes searched her face like he was memorizing every detail, and for a brief moment, something flickered behind them, something far more calculating than gratitude. Aduk, he repeated quietly. I will remember that name. What Aduk didn't know, walking out of that Bukka with an empty handbag and a heavy heart, was that the trembling old man she just saved wasn't broke at all. And the moment she gave away her last naira to defend a stranger's dignity, she had just stepped into a war for control of one of the biggest business empires in the country. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching this from tonight. I see you, whether you're new here or you've been with me since the beginning. Welcome back to African Folktale by Susan. Now let me ask you something. What just happened to Pa Gabriel in that Bukka, being dragged, mocked, recorded like an animal in a cage? Was that fair to you? If your answer is no, If any part of you felt angry watching a helpless old man get humiliated for something as small as a plate of food, then prove it. Hit that subscribe button right now, because silence is the same as agreeing with what those people did to him. Aduk didn't stay silent. Don't you stay silent either. Now let's get back into the story. The room was dark except for a single kerosene lantern flickering in the corner, casting long shadows against the cracked walls. Aduk pushed open the wooden door of their one-room shack, her empty handbag suddenly feeling heavier than it had all week. "Sister Aduk, you're back." Her younger brother, turned, jumped up from the mat where he sat with their sister, Busy. His eyes went straight to her bag. "Did you bring akara? I'm so hungry." Aduk forced a smile, kneeling down to hug him. "Tomorrow, okay? I promise." "You said that this morning too," Tan mumbled, but he hugged her back anyway, his small arms tightening around her neck like he could sense something was wrong even if he didn't understand it. Busy, only 9 years old, studied her sister's face with the kind of sharpness children develop too early when life doesn't give them a choice. "Sister, why are your eyes red?" "I'm just tired," Aduk said quickly, standing and walking toward the thin mattress in the corner where their mother lay. "Mama," she whispered, kneeling beside her. "Did you eat today?" Her mother's eyes fluttered open, sunken and tired, her breathing shallow. "Busy gave me Gary and water this afternoon." "I'm fine, my daughter. The doctor said you need your medicine every day, Mama. Not just when we manage to find money." "I know," her mother said softly, reaching out a frail hand to touch Aduk's cheek. "Did you sell enough sachet water today? Will we have something for the medicine tomorrow?" Aduk's throat tightened. She thought about lying, but her mother had raised her not to. "I gave the money away, Mama." Her mother's hand froze against her cheek. "You did what?" There was an old man at Momangozi's Bukka. They were humiliating him, dragging him, recording him like he was some kind of criminal, all because he couldn't pay for his food. "Mama, I couldn't just sit there and watch." "Aduk." Her mother's voice cracked, not with anger, but with a fear that ran deeper than money. "That was your medicine money. 3 weeks of saving, gone in one moment." "I know." Aduk's eyes filled with tears now that she was no longer holding them back for strangers. "I know what it means. But Mama, you should have seen his face. He looked so broken, so ashamed. Nobody deserves that." Her mother stared at her for a long moment, and something softened behind the exhaustion in her eyes. "You have my father's heart," she whispered. "He was the same way. Gave away his last coin to strangers and died with nothing but the love of everyone who knew him. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Mama?" Her mother managed a weak smile. "Ask me again when it stops being both." "He sounds like a good man," Aduk said quietly. "He was a poor man who died rich in ways nobody could count," her mother replied. "I used to be angry at him for it, when I was your age. I wanted a father who thought about his own children first. It took me years to understand that his kindness wasn't a weakness. It was the only wealth he had, and he refused to let poverty take that from him too." From the corner, Tom's stomach growled loudly, and he groaned, curling tighter into himself. Aduk closed her eyes, guilt washing over her in waves. She had done the right thing, she believed that with every part of her heart, but doing the right thing didn't fill empty stomachs or buy medicine that couldn't wait until tomorrow. "Come here," Aduk said, pulling Tond and Busy close to her on the mat. "Let me tell you something. Tomorrow, no matter how hard it is, we are going to be okay. I promise you that." "How?" Busy asked, her small voice skeptical in a way that broke Aduk's heart. "You always say that, but nothing changes." Aduk didn't have an answer for her, not one that would satisfy a 9-year-old who had already learned not to trust easy promises. So she simply held her sister tighter and said nothing at all. "I'll go to Ayaboza's shop first thing in the morning," Aduk said, standing and wiping her face. I'll ask if I can start selling her fried yam on percentage. It won't be much, but it's something. You always find a way, her mother said, her eyes already drifting closed again from exhaustion. Just like your grandfather. Aduk tucked a thin wrapper around her mother's shoulders and turned to her siblings. Come. Let's sleep. Tomorrow will be better. You said that yesterday, Busy mumbled, but she curled up beside her brother anyway, her small hand finding Aduk's in the darkness. Long after her siblings' breathing evened out into sleep, Aduk lay awake staring at the cracks in the ceiling, replaying the moment in the Bukka over and over. The way the old man's hands had trembled. The way his eyes had welled up but refused to let a single tear fall in front of his tormentors. The way he had grabbed her wrist and said her name like it meant something to him. I will remember that name, he had said. What was that supposed to mean? Was it gratitude, or something else? She couldn't shake the way his eyes had studied her, searching, calculating, like he was solving a puzzle she didn't know she was part of. Old men who ate at roadside bukkas and couldn't afford their bills didn't usually speak with that kind of quiet authority. It was a small detail, barely a flicker, but it stayed lodged in her mind like a splinter she couldn't remove. She told herself it didn't matter. She would probably never see the old man again. Kindness didn't always come back around, and she hadn't helped him expecting anything in return. That wasn't who she was, and she refused to let herself hope for a reward that would likely never come. But sleep refused to come easily, her mind circling back to her mother's shallow breathing, to Tom's hungry stomach, to the medicine bottle sitting empty on the shelf. She turned onto her side, counting the cracks in the wall by lantern light until the flame finally burned out and left her in total darkness, alone with her thoughts and her doubts. Somewhere outside, a rooster crowed once, too early, confused by a stray beam of light. The street beyond their door was beginning to stir, the distant sound of a generator sputtering to life, a neighbor's radio crackling with static before finding a station. Just before dawn, when the sky outside had barely begun to lighten from black to deep blue, a sharp knock rattled their front door. Aduk's eyes snapped open. Nobody knocked on their door this early, not unless something was wrong. Who is that? Her mother's weak voice called from the mattress, alarm cutting through her exhaustion. Aduk's heart pounded as she rose carefully, stepping over her sleeping siblings toward the door. Through the small gap in the wood, she could see the silhouette of a tall man in an expensive black suit, standing far too composed and clean for their narrow, dusty street, his polished shoes almost glowing against the red dust. Who's there? Aduk asked, her voice tight with caution, her hand gripping the door latch. Good morning, the man said, his tone polite but formal, almost rehearsed. I'm looking for a young woman named Aduk. I was told she lives here. Aduk's hand froze on the door latch, her mind racing back to the old man's trembling fingers, his searching eyes, the strange weight in his voice when he said her name. Who is asking? She said carefully, not opening the door any further. The man on the other side paused for a moment, as if choosing his next words with great care. My employer sent me. He said to tell you that he never forgets a kindness. Aduk's grip on the door latch tightened. What employer? I don't understand. The man reached into his jacket, and Aduk instinctively stepped back, her heart hammering. But he only produced a plain white envelope, holding it out toward the gap in the door. He asked me to give you this personally. He also asked that you come with me, if you're willing. There's a car waiting outside. I'm not going anywhere with a stranger at this hour, Aduk said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. Aduk, who is it? Her mother called weakly from the mattress, struggling to sit up. Stay there, Mama, Aduk called back, then turned her attention to the man again. Tell your employer I don't want anything from him. What I did last night, I didn't do it for a reward. The man's expression softened, just slightly. He said you would say that. He also said to tell you this isn't charity. It's a job offer, and a serious one. He said if you refuse, he understands, and he won't trouble you again. But he asked that you at least hear him out. Aduk hesitated, glancing back at her sleeping siblings, at her mother's frail silhouette on the mattress, at the empty shelf where medicine should have been. A job offer. The words settled into her chest with a strange, cautious hope she didn't want to trust. Give me a moment, she said, and shut the door. She found her mother's eyes waiting for her when she turned around, sharp despite the exhaustion. A job? Her mother asked. From the old man you helped? I don't know, Mama. It could be dangerous. It could be nothing. Or it could be the answer we've been praying for, her mother said. Aduk, look at me. Look at this room. Look at your brother and sister. We cannot afford to close every door out of fear. And if it's a trap? Her mother reached for her hand, gripping it with more strength than her frail body seemed to hold. Then you will be smart enough to walk back out of it. You always have been. Aduk stood there for a long moment, torn between fear and the desperate need for something, anything, to change. Finally, she nodded, more to herself than to her mother, and opened the door again. I'll come, she said. But I want to know where we're going first. Of course, the man said, stepping aside to reveal a gleaming black SUV parked awkwardly on the narrow dirt road, utterly out of place among the tin roofs and potholes. My name is Ode. I work for Paul Gabriel Okonji. He would like to speak with you himself. The name meant nothing to Aduk, but the way Ode said it, with a kind of practiced reverence, told her it should have. The ride was quiet, the leather seats cool beneath her, the city passing by in a blur she barely recognized. They left behind the narrow streets of her neighborhood, the roadside stalls and the open gutters, and entered a part of the city Aduk had only ever seen from a distance, gates guarded by armed men, houses hidden behind high walls draped in flowering vines. The SUV finally slowed in front of a mansion so large it seemed to swallow the morning light, its white walls gleaming, its compound wide enough to fit her entire street inside it twice over. This can't be right, Aduk murmured, staring up at the building as Ode opened her door. Come, Ode said simply, leading her through the front entrance, past a marble foyer with a chandelier that scattered fractured light across the floor, and into a quiet study lined with books and old photographs. Paul Gabriel sat in a leather armchair by the window, dressed now in a crisp white kaftan, nothing like the trembling, humiliated man from the Bukka the night before. He rose the moment he saw her, his eyes brightening with something close to relief. Aduk, he said warmly. Thank you for coming. Aduk stood frozen in the doorway, her mind struggling to reconcile the two images of him, the broken old man being dragged by his collar, and this composed, dignified figure standing in a room worth more than everything she owned. You're not poor, she said slowly, the realization settling over her like cold water. You were never poor. No, Paul Gabriel admitted, gesturing for her to sit. I am not. Then why? Anger flickered through her confusion. Why let them humiliate you like that? Why let me give away money I couldn't afford to lose, for a lie? Sit, please, Paul Gabriel said gently, and I will explain everything I can. Aduk remained standing, arms crossed, refusing to soften so easily. I'm listening. Paul Gabriel sighed, lowering himself back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 70-some years. I own the Okonji Group. Perhaps you've seen our name on buildings, on trucks, on billboards across the city. My son, Debo, runs it publicly now. I stepped back from the spotlight years ago, after my wife passed. That still doesn't explain the Bukka, Aduk said. You could have simply hired investigators. Background checks. Interviews, Aduk pressed, still standing, still guarded. Why put yourself through actual humiliation? Why let strangers drag you by your collar, record you like an animal? Paul Gabriel's hands folded in his lap, and for a moment his composed expression cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Because paperwork can be faked, Aduk. Interviews can be rehearsed. But nobody rehearses how they treat a man they believe is beneath them. That reaction, in the moment, unguarded, is the only truth I have left that I can rely on. So you humiliated yourself on purpose. I have humiliated myself many times over this past year, he said quietly. More than you can imagine. I have been spat on. I have been struck. I have slept on bare floors when no one would give a broke old man shelter for the night. He paused, his eyes distant. But last night was the first time in 12 months that someone chose kindness over cruelty when there was nothing in it for them. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. I don't want your money, Aduk said finally, though her voice had lost some of its earlier sharpness. I told Ode that already. I'm not offering you money, Paul Gabriel said. Not directly. I'm offering you a position within my company, overseeing a new initiative I've been developing quietly, one my son doesn't fully know about yet. It comes with a proper salary, benefits, enough to care for your mother and siblings the way you deserve to. Aduk's chest tightened at the mention of her family, at how much this stranger somehow already knew about her life. How do you know about my mother? My siblings. I had Ode look into your circumstances after you left the Bukka, Paul Gabriel admitted without shame. I needed to know if the woman who gave away her last naira for a stranger was who she appeared to be, or if there was something else driving her kindness. And what did you find? That your mother has been sick for 8 months. That you've sold sachet water, cleaned houses, and worked as a laundry girl to keep your family fed. That the money you gave me last night was meant for her medication, money you have been saving for 3 weeks. His voice softened. You gave it away anyway. Knowing exactly what it would cost you. Aduk's eyes stung, but she refused to let the tears fall in front of him. So this is charity. You feel sorry for me? No, Paul Gabriel said firmly, leaning forward. This is trust. There is a difference, and I think you know it. I am dying, Aduk. My doctors give me perhaps a year, maybe less. Before I go, I need to secure something precious, something my own son does not yet understand the value of protecting. The weight of his words settled into the room like a shadow. Aduk's pulse quickened. Something about the way he said it, careful, deliberate, made the study feel smaller, the air heavier. This was no longer a conversation about gratitude or reward. This was something far bigger than a plate of EBA and egusi soup, bigger than a torn envelope of naira notes on a Bukka table. What kind of something? Aduk asked carefully. She thought of Ode waiting silently by the door, of the black SUV outside that could swallow her entire street, of the sheer distance between the mansion she now stood in and the one-room shack where her mother lay waiting for medicine that still hadn't been bought. Paul Gabriel studied her for a long moment, as though weighing exactly how much truth she could carry. The kind of secret, he said slowly, that could either save my family's empire, or destroy it completely, depending on whose hands it falls into. A secret, Aduk repeated slowly. What kind of secret is worth all this? The Bukka, the test, bringing a stranger into your home. Paul Gabriel rose from his chair and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the compound below where gardeners trimmed hedges into perfect shapes. 40 years ago, I built this company from nothing, he said. A single truck, a single contract, and a stubbornness my late wife used to call foolishness. Today, the Okonji Group employs 12,000 people. Construction, shipping, real estate. My son Debo runs the public side of it now. That sounds like something to be proud of. It is, Paul Gabriel said, though his voice carried a weight that contradicted the words. But pride and trust are not the same thing, Aduk. Debo is charming. Investors love him. Women love him, perhaps too much for his own good. But he has never once sat with the drivers who haul our cargo through the night, never shaken the hand of a construction worker who breaks his back for our company's foundations. And you have. Every year, Paul Gabriel said, turning back to face her. It's how I've always understood whether the empire I built still stands on solid ground, or whether it has quietly begun to rot from the inside without anyone noticing. Aduk shifted uncomfortably. And you think it's rotting? Paul Gabriel didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to a locked cabinet behind his desk, retrieved a small brass key from his kaftan pocket, and opened it carefully. Inside sat a single leather folder, worn at the edges, tied shut with a faded ribbon. This folder, he said, contains something my son does not know exists. A clause in my original founding documents that gives me, and only me, the power to name a successor outside of blood if I believe my chosen heir cannot be trusted with what I've built. Aduk's breath caught. You want to disinherit your own son? I want to protect 12,000 families who depend on this company surviving Debo's recklessness, Paul Gabriel said firmly. There is a difference, though I don't expect you to understand it yet. What would this job even involve? Aduk asked, still trying to steady herself against the weight of everything she'd just heard. You still haven't told me what you actually want me to do. For now, you would work close to me directly. My personal office, reviewing reports, sitting in on meetings, learning how the company truly operates from the ground up, not the version Debo presents to the board. Paul Gabriel returned to his chair, setting the leather folder gently on the desk between them without opening it further. In time, if I decide the succession clause is necessary, you would need to understand this company well enough to help guide it, or at the very least, protect it from being dismantled by greed. You're asking me to spy on your son. I'm asking you to pay attention, Paul Gabriel corrected. There's a difference, though I understand why it might not feel that way yet. Aduk wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how small she felt in a room this large, surrounded by wealth she couldn't have imagined 24 hours earlier. And if I say no? If I walk out of here and go back to selling sachet water? Then I will respect that decision, and Ode will drive you home immediately, Paul Gabriel said simply. I am not in the business of forcing kindness, Aduk. I have simply been searching for it. Why are you telling me this? Aduk asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm nobody. I sell sachet water on the roadside. You are the only person in 12 months who chose kindness when it cost you everything, Paul Gabriel said. I don't need you to run this company, Aduk. I need someone honest inside these walls, someone I can trust to tell me the truth when everyone else around me only tells me what I want to hear. His voice dropped lower. Debo was not always like this, Aduk. When his mother was alive, he was gentle, curious, generous even. Something changed after we lost her. I watched my son feel the emptiness she left behind with parties, with women, with anything that made the silence in this house more bearable. I have tried for years to reach him. I am running out of time to keep trying. Before Aduk could respond, the study door swung open without a knock. A tall young man strode in, dressed in a sharp navy suit, his cologne arriving half a second before he did. He stopped abruptly at the sight of Aduk, his eyes narrowing with open suspicion as they swept over her worn dress and sandals. Papa, who is this? He asked, not bothering to hide the disdain in his voice. Debo, Paul Gabriel said calmly, this is Aduk. She'll be joining the company, starting this week. Debo laughed, short and sharp, like he expected this to be a joke that hadn't landed yet. Joining the company. Doing what, exactly? Cleaning the offices. Debo, Paul Gabriel warned, his tone sharpening. No, Papa, I'm serious. Debo circled Aduk slowly, the way a buyer inspects merchandise he has no intention of purchasing. Look at her. No degree, I'm guessing. No experience. What position could she possibly be qualified for in a company this size? Aduk's cheeks burned, humiliation rising in her chest, but she refused to look away from him. I'm standing right here, she said evenly. You can ask me directly. Debo blinked, momentarily caught off guard by her boldness. Then his mouth curled into something between amusement and irritation. Fine. What makes you think you belong in this building? I don't think anything yet, Aduk said. Your father is the one who invited me. If you have questions about that, maybe you should ask him instead of circling me like I'm something you're deciding whether to buy. Silence fell over the study. Paul Gabriel's lips twitched with the faintest hint of approval, quickly hidden. Debo's jaw tightened, his charm slipping just enough to reveal something colder underneath. Papa, can I speak with you? Alone. Anything you want to say, you can say in front of Aduk, Paul Gabriel replied. She'll be part of this company now. Best you get used to that. Debo's eyes flicked back to Aduk, calculating, measuring her like a threat he hadn't anticipated. Fine, he said tightly. Welcome to the Okonji Group, Miss Aduk. I'm sure your time here will be very educational. He turned and left the study without another word, but the tension he left behind lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. She stood there a moment longer, watching the door Debo had just stormed through, feeling the full weight of what she had just walked into. This wasn't a simple job offer anymore. This was a house divided, a father and son standing on opposite sides of something far bigger than money, and she had just been placed directly between them without ever asking to be. He doesn't like me, Aduk said quietly. He doesn't like anything that threatens his comfort, Paul Gabriel replied. That is precisely why I need someone like you inside these walls. If you were in Aduk's position right now, staring down a man who has everything you've never had, would you have backed down, or would you have stood your ground the way she just did? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I want to know if you're built like Aduk or like everyone else who's ever underestimated her. And before we go any further, I need to ask you something important. This story still has so many twists coming, twists that will make you gasp out loud, and I don't want you to miss a single one of them. If you're not subscribed to African Folktale by Susan yet, what exactly are you waiting for? Aduk risked everything for a stranger. The least you can do is hit one button. Subscribe now, because Debo Okonji is not going to let this go quietly, and neither should you. Let's continue. 3 weeks passed, and Aduk's world transformed in ways she was still struggling to understand. Her mother had medicine now, delivered weekly by a private doctor Paul Gabriel insisted on sending. Town and Busy had new school uniforms, their first hot meals in months, a small television that made them shriek with joy the day it arrived. But none of it came without cost. Every morning, Aduk left before dawn and returned after dark, learning the Okonji Group from the inside the way Paul Gabriel had promised, sitting in meetings, reviewing contracts, watching. And watching Debo had become its own education. You're late again, Debo said one morning, leaning against the doorway of the small office Paul Gabriel had given her, one floor below his own. Third time this week. I was reviewing the shipping contracts you asked the finance team to rush through, Aduk replied evenly, not looking up from her desk. The ones with numbers that don't quite add up. Debo's easy smile flickered, just for a second. Numbers are complicated. I wouldn't expect someone with your background to understand all of it. I understand enough to know that a warehouse listed as receiving 400 tons of cement last month only shows records for 250, Aduk said, finally meeting his eyes. Where did the other 150 tons go, Debo? The office went silent. Debo pushed off the doorway, walking closer, his charm hardening into something sharper. Careful, Aduk. You're an assistant. Not an auditor. Not a board member. Not family. Your father asked me to pay attention, she said. That's exactly what I'm doing. My father is old and sentimental, Debo snapped, his composure finally cracking. He picked a stranger off the street because she gave him free food one night, and now he thinks she's some kind of moral compass for this entire company. Do you know how insane that sounds? Maybe if the company had nothing to hide, it wouldn't sound insane at all. Debo's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Aduk saw something flash behind his eyes, not just irritation, but fear. Real fear. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual practice calm. "Enjoy your little investigation," he said coldly. "But remember something, Aduk. My father is 73 years old. Whatever fantasy he's built around you, it will not survive him. And when he's gone, this company, this office, all of it, belongs to me." He left without waiting for a response, his cologne lingering long after his footsteps faded down the hallway. Aduk returned to her office, closing the door behind her, her heart still pounding from the confrontation. She sat at her desk and stared at the shipping contract spread in front of her, Debo's threat echoing in her mind. He hadn't denied anything. He hadn't even tried. He had simply reminded her of exactly how powerless she truly was in a house that would one day belong entirely to him. She thought about walking away, about telling Pa Gabriel she couldn't do this anymore, that the danger was too great for a girl who had nothing but her mother's medicine and her siblings' school fees to lose. But then she thought about the 12,000 families Pa Gabriel had spoken of, about the drivers and construction workers who trusted a company that might already be rotting from the inside exactly as he feared. She picked up the first contract and kept reading. That evening, Aduk stayed behind after everyone else had gone home, pulling the shipping records for the past 6 months, cross-referencing them against warehouse inventories, delivery logs, invoices. The deeper she dug, the more the numbers refused to make sense, small discrepancies at first, a few tons here, a slightly inflated invoice there, until the pattern became impossible to ignore. Money was disappearing, quietly, consistently, funneled through shell companies with names too generic to trace easily, all of it tracing back to accounts Debo personally controlled. By the time she'd finished cross-referencing the fourth warehouse against its corresponding invoices, her hands had gone cold despite the warm night air pressing against the office windows. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't a single mistake buried in a stack of paperwork. This was a pattern built carefully over time by someone who understood exactly how to make theft look like ordinary business. Her phone buzzed. A message from Pa Gabriel. "Come to the study. Now." Aduk's stomach tightened as she gathered the printed records into a folder and made her way through the darkened halls of the mansion. She found Pa Gabriel standing by the window again, his silhouette outlined against the moonlight, looking older and more fragile than she'd seen him since that first night at the Bukka. "You found it," he said without turning around. "The missing shipments. The shell accounts. How did you know?" "Because I've suspected for 2 years, and I needed someone I could trust to confirm it without Debo realizing he was being investigated." Pa Gabriel finally turned to face her, his expression heavy with grief rather than anger. "How much has he taken?" Aduk opened the folder, her hands trembling slightly. "Based on what I could trace so far, close to 200 million naira over 18 months. It could be more. Some of the accounts are still hidden behind layers I haven't broken through yet." Pa Gabriel closed his eyes, absorbing the number like a physical blow. "My own son." "Sir, I don't know if he's doing this alone," Aduk said carefully. "Some of these approvals required signatures from the finance director. Someone senior enough to bypass internal audits without raising questions." Chief Ibekwe, Pa Gabriel murmured, more to himself than to her. "My oldest friend. My lawyer for 30 years. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking every bit his 73 years. "If Ibekwe is involved, then this goes far deeper than Debo's recklessness. This is deliberate. Calculated." Pa Gabriel rubbed his temples, exhaustion carved deep into every line of his face. "I built this company so that men like Ibekwe and my own son would never have to struggle the way I struggled as a young man. And this is what they've done with that gift. Turned it into something to steal from, quietly, while smiling at me across dinner tables. What do you want to do now?" Aduk asked gently. "I want proof strong enough that no lawyer, no board member, and no amount of charm can talk their way around it," Pa Gabriel said, his voice hardening with resolve. "Can you get it?" "I can try," Aduk said. But sir, if Debo or Chief Ibekwe suspect what I've found, they won't just fire me quietly. People who steal 200 million naira don't let a roadside sachet water seller stand in their way without a fight. Then we'll have to make sure they never see you coming, Paul Gabriel said. A knock interrupted them. Ade appeared in the doorway, his expression tight with urgency. Sir, forgive the intrusion, but there's something you both need to see. He held up his phone, a video already playing. Aduk's blood ran cold as she watched footage of herself, taken just that afternoon, walking through the finance department, photographing documents on her desk. The angle made it look secretive, deliberate, criminal, though she'd been doing nothing more than organizing files Paul Gabriel himself had requested. This was posted an hour ago, Ode said grimly. On the company's internal network, and it's already spreading to social media. The caption accuses Miss Aduk of corporate espionage, of using her closeness to you to steal sensitive company information. Who posted it? Paul Gabriel demanded. Ade hesitated before answering. The account is anonymous, sir. But the video was taken from an angle that could only have come from Debo's private office camera. Aduk felt the floor tilt beneath her. 3 weeks of careful, quiet investigation, and Debo hadn't just discovered what she was doing, he had turned it against her before she could even bring the truth to light. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an unknown number. You should have taken the money and walked away when you had the chance. Now everyone will know exactly what kind of woman my father really invited into this house. Aduk's hands shook as she stared at the message, understanding with sudden, sickening clarity that Debo hadn't just found a way to discredit her. He had found a way to destroy her completely, and he was only just getting started. Somewhere in the mansion above her, she could hear Debo's laughter drifting down a hallway, easy and untroubled, the laughter of a man who believed he had already won. By morning, the video had spread far beyond the company's internal network. Screenshots circulated across social media, captioned with cruel speculation, painting Aduk as a manipulative opportunist who had wormed her way into a dying billionaire's affections to steal from him. Aduk sat in her small office, phone buzzing endlessly with messages from numbers she didn't recognize, some cruel, some curious, a few from old acquaintances suddenly eager to know if the rumors were true. She turned the phone face down on her desk and pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry. She scrolled through a few of the messages despite herself, each one landing like a small blow. Someone had even dug up an old photo of her selling sachet water on the roadside, captioning it with a mocking comparison to her new position inside the Okonji group. The cruelty of it stung in a way she hadn't expected, not because strangers online mattered to her, but because it reminded her how easily a single video, framed the right way, could erase weeks of honest work. A sharp knock made her look up. Chief Ibekwe stood in her doorway, immaculate in a charcoal suit, his expression carefully arranged into something resembling concern. Aduk, he said smoothly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I heard about the unfortunate video. Terrible business, gossip like that. People can be so cruel online. Is that why you're here? Aduk asked carefully. To offer sympathy. I'm here because Paul Gabriel is not well, Ibekwe said, his tone shifting into something graver. The stress of recent weeks has taken a toll on his heart. His doctors are concerned. Aduk's chest tightened with genuine alarm. Is he all right? Where is he? Resting, for now, Ibekwe said. But Aduk, I think it's time we had an honest conversation, woman to man, about what's really happening here. I'm listening. Ibekwe settled into the chair across from her desk, lacing his fingers together with practiced calm. You've been digging through company records. Warehouse inventories, shipping manifests, financial statements that require decades of experience to properly interpret. I understand you mean well, but you're a young woman with no formal training in corporate finance, poking around documents far beyond your understanding, and drawing conclusions that could seriously damage this company's reputation if they were ever made public. Are you saying the discrepancies I found aren't real? I'm saying context matters, Ibekwe said carefully. Large companies move enormous sums of money constantly. What looks like theft to an untrained eye is often simply the complexity of doing business at this scale. 200 million naira isn't complexity, Chief Ibekwe. It's theft, and you know it, because half of those transactions require your signature. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ibekwe's practice comb slipped, just for a moment, revealing something colder underneath. Be very careful, young lady, he said quietly. You are standing in a house far bigger than you understand, holding on to an old man's sentimentality as your only protection. Paul Gabriel will not live forever. And when he's gone, I promise you, this company will remember exactly who tried to tear it apart with baseless accusations. Is that a threat? It's a warning, Ibekwe said, rising smoothly from the chair. Withdraw your later investigation. Apologize publicly for the confusion this video has caused. Walk away with whatever money Paul Gabriel has already given you, and go back to your old life before this gets any worse for you. He left without waiting for a response, his cologne, sharper and colder than Debo's, lingering in the small office like a warning of its own. Aduk sat frozen for a long moment, replaying his words. He hadn't denied the theft. He had only tried to bury it, then threatened her when burying it failed. Whatever fear had kept her hesitant these past few weeks evaporated, replaced by something colder and steadier, a resolve she hadn't known she possessed until this exact moment. Then she grabbed her folder of evidence and ran. She found Ade in the hallway outside Paul Gabriel's private wing, his face tight with worry. How is he? She demanded. Resting, Ade said. The doctor gave him something to calm his heart rate. He's been asking for you. Her mind raced back to her mother's words weeks earlier, about her grandfather, about kindness sometimes being both a blessing and a burden depending on the moment life demanded it of you. She understood now, more than she ever had, exactly what her mother meant. Aduk pushed past him gently and entered the bedroom, where Paul Gabriel lay propped against pillows, looking smaller and frailer than she had ever seen him, an oxygen tube resting beneath his nose. Aduk, he said weakly, managing a small smile. I heard about the video. I'm sorry. This is exactly the kind of ugliness I was trying to protect you from. Never mind the video, Aduk said, kneeling beside his bed. Chief Ibekwe just threatened me. He all but confirmed he's been helping Debo steal from the company for years. Paul Gabriel's expression hardened despite his exhaustion. Then we no longer have the luxury of moving slowly. Sir, in your condition. Aduk, please. His grip on her hand tightened. I have spent my whole life building something I believed would outlast me. I will not spend my final days watching it get stolen from 12,000 families by two men who never once loved this company the way they loved what it could buy them. My condition is precisely why we cannot wait any longer, Paul Gabriel interrupted, struggling to sit up straighter. Aduk, listen to me carefully. Beneath my desk in the study, there is a hidden compartment behind the third bookshelf panel from the left. Inside, you will find the original founding documents of this company, including the succession clause I told you about. What do you want me to do with them? I am calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, Paul Gabriel said, his voice gaining strength with resolve even as his body remained weak. Every major shareholder, every board member, Debo, and Chief Ibekwe will be present. I want you there too, Aduk, with every piece of evidence you've gathered. They'll destroy me in that room, Aduk said quietly. Debo already has. Half the company already believes I'm some kind of con artist. They believe what they've been shown, Paul Gabriel said gently. Tomorrow, you will show them what's true instead. Paul Gabriel reached out and took her hand, his grip surprisingly firm despite everything. Tomorrow, I am going to tell that boardroom the truth, all of it, starting with a roadside Bukka and a plate of EBA and egusi soup. And when I am finished, Aduk, they will understand exactly why I trust you more than I trust my own blood. Tears blurred Aduk's vision, but she nodded firmly. Then I'll be ready. There's one more thing, Pa Gabriel said, his expression growing serious. Debo cannot know what's coming. Not tonight. If he realizes what I'm planning, he and Ibekwe will find a way to stop the meeting entirely, or worse, disappear with whatever they can move before morning. I understand, Aduk said. I won't say a word. But even as she said it, walking back through the mansion's darkened halls toward her small office, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her every move. And she was right. Standing in the shadows of the east corridor, phone raised, Debo had been listening outside his father's bedroom door the entire time, his expression twisted into something far more dangerous than jealousy. He had heard every word. Slowly, without a sound, he lowered his phone, turned, and walked back toward his own wing of the mansion, already dialing a number he hadn't used in over a year, a number that belonged to someone even more dangerous than Chief Ibekwe. Debo did not sleep that night. He sat alone in his penthouse suite, phone in hand, the unfinished call to his usual fixer still sitting in his call log, never placed. He kept replaying the sound of Aduk's voice through his father's bedroom door, steady, unshaken, defending a company that wasn't even hers to defend, defending his own father against him. He thought about the first day she walked into the study in her faded blue dress, refusing to shrink under his mockery, and how something in his chest had twisted in a way he didn't have a name for. He had told himself it was irritation. Then he had told himself it was arrogance, hers, not his. He had spent 3 weeks convincing himself that the tightness in his chest whenever she walked past his office was contempt. It wasn't contempt. It never had been. Debo pressed his palms against his eyes, disgusted with himself. He had built a life out of never letting anyone close enough to matter, feeling the silence his mother's death left behind with women who wanted nothing from him but money and status, easy exchanges with no risk of losing anything real. Aduk wanted nothing from him at all. She had looked at him the very first day and seen exactly what he was, spoiled, careless, hiding, and she hadn't been impressed or intimidated. She had simply told him the truth. And he had punished her for it. The video. The rumors. The threats. He told himself it was about protecting the money, protecting his inheritance, protecting the empire he assumed would one day be entirely his. But sitting alone in the dark, he finally admitted what he had been running from for 3 weeks. He was terrified of what he felt for her, terrified of being seen the way she saw him, and destroying her felt safer than risking that she might one day walk away from him the way everyone eventually did. His phone buzzed. A message from Chief Ibekwe. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Your father is making a move. We need to talk before then. Debo stared at the message for a long time before finally typing a reply. I'm not doing anything else to hurt her. The response came back almost instantly. Then you're not doing anything to protect yourself either. Your father found the discrepancies, Debo. If we don't control tomorrow's meeting, we both go down. Debo set the phone down slowly, his jaw tightening. For 18 months, he had told himself the money was a safety net, insurance against a father who might disinherit him at any moment for reasons that never quite made sense to him. Ibekwe had made it easy, had made it feel almost justified. But sitting in the wreckage of what he'd just done to Aduk, the excuse felt hollow for the first time. He thought about his father's face the day he'd introduced Aduk in the study, that flicker of approval he'd tried so hard to hide. He thought about how long it had been since his father looked at him that way. By morning, Debo had made a decision. The boardroom on the 40th floor of Okonji Tower filled slowly, shareholders and directors murmuring among themselves, glancing at the empty seat where Pa Gabriel would normally sit, and at Aduk, standing quietly near the window in a simple grey dress, a folder clutched tightly in her hands. This is highly irregular, one board member muttered. Calling an emergency session without an agenda. The agenda, Pa Gabriel's voice rang out as he entered, walking slower than usual but with his back straight and his eyes sharp, will become clear shortly. Ade wheeled in a small cart behind him, the leather folder from the study resting on top, along with copies of financial records Aduk had spent weeks compiling. Chief Ibekwe entered moments later, his expression composed, betraying nothing. "Gabriel, you should be resting," Ibekwe said smoothly, taking his usual seat near the head of the table. The doctors said many things, but Gabriel interrupted, lowering himself into his chair at the head of the table. "None of them mentioned dying quietly while my own lawyer helped steal from the company I built." Gasps rippled around the table. Ibekwe's composure cracked, just slightly. "Gabriel, I don't know what you've been told, but I've been shown," Paul Gabriel said, nodding toward Aduk. "Every discrepancy. Every shell account. Every falsified shipment record with your signature attached to it, Ibekwe." All eyes turned toward Aduk, and for a moment, the old suspicion flickered across the room, the same suspicion the leaked video had planted a day earlier. She felt her hands trembling around the folder, but she stepped forward anyway, exactly as she'd promised. "Before anyone doubts what I'm about to present," Aduk said, her voice steadier than she felt, "you should know that a video circulated yesterday accusing me of corporate espionage. I want to be clear about what I was actually doing in that footage. I was documenting evidence of theft, at Paul Gabriel's direct request, because he suspected exactly what I'm about to show you." She opened the folder and began distributing copies around the table, walking the board through 18 months of falsified records, shell companies, and missing shipments totaling close to 200 million naira, her voice growing steadier with every page. "This is absurd," Ibekwe interrupted sharply. "Character assassination dressed up as an audit, orchestrated by a woman with no financial background and an obvious personal agenda. The signatures aren't mine, Chief Ibekwe," Aduk said calmly. "They're yours. On every single fraudulent transfer." The door swung open before Ibekwe could respond. Debo walked in, still in yesterday's clothes, unshaven, exhausted, but his eyes were clear in a way no one in that room had seen in years. "Debo," Ibekwe said, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God. Tell them this is nonsense. Tell your father these accusations are true," Debo said quietly. "Every word of it is true." The room fell into stunned silence. "Debo, what are you doing?" Ibekwe hissed under his breath. "What I should have done 18 months ago," Debo said, walking to the head of the table, standing beside his father for the first time in longer than he could remember without an argument between them. "Papa, I'm not going to pretend I didn't know about the money. I approved transfers I shouldn't have. I let Chief Ibekwe convince me it was smart business, insurance, whatever excuse made it easier to sleep at night." "Debo, stop talking right now," Ibekwe warned, his voice sharpening with real fear for the first time. "No," Debo said, turning to face him fully. "I'm done letting you tell me what to say, what to feel, who to be. You've been managing me since Mama died, filling every silence with advice that always somehow benefited you more than it benefited me or this company." He turned back to face the boardroom, his father, and finally, Aduk. "I did other things too," Debo continued, his voice unsteady now, raw in a way that startled everyone who'd only ever known him composed and charming. "The video. The threats. I leaked footage of Aduk and let people believe the worst about her, not because I believed it myself, but because I was terrified of what I actually felt when she looked at me and saw exactly who I really was for the first time in my life." Aduk's breath caught, her eyes widening as understanding settled over her. "I've spent years making sure no one ever got close enough to see me clearly," Debo said, his voice barely holding steady. "Aduk did, in one afternoon, without even trying. And instead of facing that, I tried to destroy her before she could destroy me the way I assumed everyone eventually would." The boardroom sat in stunned silence, 20 pairs of eyes moving between father, son, and the young woman standing quietly by the window, her own eyes glistening. "That doesn't excuse what I did," Debo said quickly, turning back to the table. "It explains it, but it doesn't excuse it." What excuses nothing is this? He gestured toward Ibekwe. Papa, Chief Ibekwe didn't just help me move money. He orchestrated most of it. He came to me 18 months ago, told me you were planning to cut me out of leadership entirely, told me I needed insurance before you changed the succession terms without warning. I believed him because I wanted to believe you didn't trust me. That's a lie, Ibekwe snapped, rising from his chair, his composure finally shattering completely. Gabriel, don't listen to this. He's protecting himself, twisting the story to make himself the victim. I have the recorded calls, Debo said flatly, placing his phone on the table. Every conversation where you convinced me to sign off on transfers, told me how to hide them, warned me not to tell my father. I started recording 3 months ago, Ibekwe, after I realized how deep this had actually gone. I was afraid of what would happen to me if I tried to stop and you decided to make me the only one who took the fall. Security appeared at the boardroom doors moments later, summoned quietly by Ode at Paul Gabriel's earlier instruction, standing ready the moment the truth fully surfaced. Gabriel, Ibekwe said, his voice cracking, all pretense of composure gone. 30 years. 30 years I have stood beside you, and this is how you repay that loyalty. Believing the word of a street girl and my own protégé's guilty conscience. 30 years, Paul Gabriel repeated quietly, rising slowly from his chair, every word measured and heavy. 30 years I trusted you with everything I built. And you spent the last 2 of them helping my son betray the very foundation that gave both of you everything you have. His voice hardened. Get him out of my building. Ibekwe's protest echoed down the hallway as security escorted him from the boardroom, his voice growing fainter with every step. Threats and denials tangled together until the elevator doors finally swallowed the sound completely. The board sat in stunned silence for a long moment before Paul Gabriel spoke again, his voice tired but resolute. The board will need time to process everything you've just seen, he said. 4 more charges will be filed against Chief Ibekwe by end of week. As for succession. Papa, wait. Debo stepped forward, his exhaustion giving way to something clearer, steadier. Before you decide anything about succession, I need you to know something. I don't deserve this company yet. Maybe I never will. But I want the chance to earn it honestly, starting today, starting with fixing everything I helped break. Paul Gabriel studied his son for a long moment, searching his face the same careful way he'd studied Aduk's that first morning in his study. Something in his expression softened, cautious hope replacing years of quiet disappointment. That, he said slowly, is the first honest thing you've said to me in years. He turned to the boardroom. Effective immediately, Debo will step down from his executive role temporarily, working directly under Aduk's oversight as she helps restructure our financial controls. If, in 1 year, the board and I agree he has proven himself, we will discuss his return to leadership properly earned, not simply inherited. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room, but no one objected. 3 months later, the sun hung low and golden over Momangozi's roadside Bukka, the same plastic chairs, the same worn tables, though the crowd gathered that evening was far larger than usual. Word had spread of what really happened that night months earlier. The humiliated old man dragged by his collar was Paul Gabriel Okonji himself, and the quiet stranger who paid his bill was now overseeing reforms across one of the country's largest companies. The restaurant owner who had once shoved Paul Gabriel back into his seat now stood nervously near the entrance, his earlier cruelty broadcast endlessly online until it had cost him half his regular customers. Mr. Okonji, he stammered as Paul Gabriel approached the same table from months before, Aduk walking beside him, Debo trailing a respectful step behind. Please, sir, whatever I can do to make things right. You already know what real kindness looks like, Paul Gabriel said calmly, gesturing toward Aduk. She showed you, the night everyone else in this restaurant chose cruelty instead. The owner's eyes fell to the ground, shame coloring his face as several onlookers who'd once laughed and filmed that humiliating night now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing themselves in the video still circulating, the very footage that had once mocked an old man now serving as permanent proof of who they truly were when they believed no one important was watching. Aduk sat down at the same corner table where it had all begun, and this time, Paul Gabriel sat directly across from her, no disguise, no test, simply an old man sharing a meal with the woman who had changed the direction of his entire legacy. Sister Aduk. Busy came running across the compound, turned close behind her, both dressed in new school uniforms, both healthier and brighter than they'd been in over a year. Their mother followed slowly, still recovering but steady on her feet now, her medicine no longer a luxury she had to choose between. You didn't tell us we were eating here tonight, her mother said, settling into the seat beside her, studying the Bukka with quiet recognition. I wanted you to see where it started, Aduk said softly. Debo approached last, setting a small velvet box on the table in front of Aduk, his earlier arrogance long replaced by something far more careful, far more genuine. I'm not asking for anything, he said quietly, before she could react. I know I haven't earned the right to ask you anything yet. I just wanted you to have this. Aduk opened the box slowly, finding not a ring, but a small brass key, identical to the one Paul Gabriel had once used to unlock the leather folder that started everything. It opens a new office, Debo explained. Yours, if you want it. Head of Ethical Governance and Community Investment, a position my father and I created together, because this company needs someone who understands what real integrity costs, not someone who inherited comfort without ever earning it. Aduk looked between father and son, both watching her with the same quiet hope, and finally allowed herself to smile fully for the first time in months. I accept, she said. On one condition. Anything, Debo said quickly. We build a fund, Aduk said, turning to Paul Gabriel. For families like mine. Medical emergencies, school fees, small business support, run through the company, transparent, accountable, so no one else ever has to choose between kindness and survival the way I almost did that night. Paul Gabriel smiled, the first truly peaceful smile Aduk had seen on his face since the day they met. We'll call it the Second Chance Fund, he said. Because that's exactly what you gave all of us. As the sun finished setting over the little Bukka that had somehow become the center of everything, Aduk looked around the table, at her mother laughing softly with Paul Gabriel, at Tond and busy arguing playfully over the last piece of suya, at Debo watching her with quiet, patient hope instead of the arrogance he'd once worn like armor. She thought about the plate of EBA and egusi soup that had cost her everything she'd saved, and given her back a life she never could have imagined. Kindness, she realized, had never really been a risk at all. It had simply been the beginning. If this story stayed with you, if any part of you got emotional watching an old man's dignity get restored by a girl who had every reason to walk away and didn't, then you already know what to do. Comment second chance right now and tell me which moment hit you hardest, the humiliation, the reveal, or Debo finally telling the truth in that boardroom. To everyone who's been here since the beginning, thank you for trusting me with your evenings. And if you're new, if this is the first story of mine you've ever watched all the way to the end, don't you dare leave without subscribing. Aduk gave away everything she had for a stranger. All I'm asking from you is one click. I tell stories like this every single week, stories about ordinary people who choose kindness even when the world gives them every reason not to. Turn on your notifications, because you don't want to miss the next one. Until then, I'm Susan. Stay kind out there.